Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session about investigative journalism and Pinpoint. My name is Rochelle Solomon, and I am the News Lab Teaching Fellow for Canada. And teaching fellows like myself, we connect with journalists to explore different digital tools that can help with reporting. So this is the third in our public series of trainings. And the other news fellows around the world are also hosting sessions on the same topics for their respective countries and languages right now. You can register for upcoming Canadian sessions at the website you see on your screen. You can also visit that site to watch back to previous sessions. So over the past few weeks, we've already explored topics like vaccine and COVID-19 resources for newsrooms, very topical, of course, and online tools for freelancers, which is useful at any time. And in fact, extends, of course, beyond what's useful to freelancers. It's useful to anyone. I included a link in the chat just to get you back to where you can register and where you can watch back to those sessions as well. A quick note to also say that News Lab Teaching Fellows also work one-on-one with newsrooms and offer customized training to teams of journalists. So if you're interested in setting something up for your team, you see my email address on the screen. Please feel free to use it. Newsroom training sessions in Canada can be in English or in French. And there are so many different topics that we can explore together. It is actually the very first time there is a News Lab Teaching Fellow based in Canada. So it's been really exciting to meet all these teams that haven't necessarily had News Lab training in the past. And some of the most popular, and I should say, of course, virtual trainings only right now. I think that goes without saying after a year into the pandemic. But I'd say some of the most popular tools we've looked at so far have been things around advanced search. Everyone likes to know that because it helps them not only at work, but in their daily lives. But in terms of specific news applications, we've had a lot of fun looking at maps so far and different visualization tools. And also Pinpoint has been very popular, and we're going to look at Pinpoint together today. A bit of background before we get started. The Google News Lab, the team that I'm part of, it falls under the Google News Initiative. So my role focuses on the first of these three E's, to elevate and strengthen quality journalism. Now, the GNI's other main areas of focus are about evolving business models and empowering news organizations through tech innovation. And if you ever have questions about either of those two second E's, you see the email address on your screen. That's where the whole Canada team can be reached. And we'll figure out who's the best person to be able to help. So GNI-Canada at google.com. Again, I am in Canada, so regardless of where you may be joining us from, that particular email address is specifically for Canadian news organizations. But the tools we're going to talk about today are accessible to everyone, regardless of where you may be. And some of them you'll find directly on the Journalist Studio website. I mentioned Pinpoint, which you can see listed at the bottom of the screen. We're also going to see the Common Knowledge Project in today's session. So the Journalist Studio website really brings together a suite of online tools that are helpful for journalists. You're going to notice that some of them on the site are built by Google, others aren't built by Google. They've just been chosen because they help journalists work more securely, more efficiently, and even sometimes more creatively. Also on the Journalist Studio site, you're going to find a link to a dedicated training website. So the courses there are available in several different languages, including in French. And these guide you through how to use different digital tools that are useful in a journalistic context. I'll drop the Journalist Studio URL right in the chat so you can access it really easily. And this right here, well, this is a direct link to the training site, g.co/news training. All the lessons are self-guided, and there's even an option if you want to track your progress. Here is a roadmap of what we're going to cover together today. First, some tools you can try right away. The Common Knowledge Project, which I mentioned. Then we'll see some tools from OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. And we'll take a quick glimpse at the Bellingcat Online Investigation Toolkit. Then we're going to jump right into talking about Pinpoint, which will include a demo. And we'll end with some online resources where you can find information about journalism and artificial intelligence, which is already being used in different ways for investigative reporting. Pour ceux d'entre vous qui parlent français, for those of you who may speak French, cette présentation se fera en anglais, évidemment, mais si vous avez des questions, vous pouvez les poser en français si vous voulez. If you have any questions, you can feel free to leave them in the chat. Before we do get into the tools, I wanted to mention that if you are a student interested in investigative journalism in Canada right now, I want to highlight 2 Canadian centers where students and seasoned investigative journalists work together. And in fact, both are quite new in terms of their formal launches. So the first is the Institute for Investigative Journalism. It launched 2 years ago. And it allows students to carry out large-scale investigations that are in the national public interest. Now, this is all done under the guidance of professional reporters, and they focus on underserved communities. One of the recent projects took a wide look at water contamination and the quality of drinking water across Canada. So that is the Institute for Investigative Journalism, which is managed out of Concordia University. The other Canadian project that also officially launched recently, this one last year in the fall of 2020, it's out of the University of Toronto. It's called the Investigative Journalism Bureau, and it also brings together professional and student journalists, along with academics, media organizations, and the goal is to tell public interest stories. And in this case, it's issues shaping public health that are central. So this has grown out of the National Student Investigative Reporting Network, which started back in 2010. So as you can see, there are real efforts in Canada right now to make sure there's a focus on investigative journalism and, well, the future of investigative journalism. It is, of course, no secret that investigative work takes a lot of time, which means it usually costs a lot of money. And with shifts in the news ecosystem, it's a challenging but important space to work in. So let's look at some online tools that can be useful in investigative work. And the tools I'm going to show you are specifically built with journalists in mind. So this is the Common Knowledge Project, and it wants to make it easier to share data. So data that is important to local communities. It allows you to go from the first steps of finding and exploring data to then visualizing it and then sharing it as part of the story, all from one tool. It is being built by Polygraph, and they specialize in data and visual journalism. I'll put the link in the chat. There you go. And you can see in the top left corner of the site, the tool is currently in beta. So the team is still working on this, and they are open to all feedback. But with that said, there's a lot you can already do with the Common Knowledge Project, and you can see how useful it would be in future iterations as well. So the first thing you will notice as a Canadian user is that the sources are from the US, and that is because it's being built on top of this platform called Data Commons. And the Data Commons is drawing from open data sets like from organizations, like the US Census Bureau, the FBI, the US Centers for Disease Control, for example. So these are often sources of global interest, but there isn't specific Canadian data you're going to find here, at least not yet. So the Common Knowledge Project is hoping to add more data sets in the future. If you have specific interests, as I mentioned, it's a good time to get your feedback in, let the team know at the Common Knowledge Project. You can get in touch with them through a feedback form you're able to find on their website. So for the purposes of illustration, I entered Fort Lauderdale, Florida on the landing page. And as you can see, the tool automatically generates a series of charts on some key stats about the location. And it organizes it all under a set of verticals that help us see things more clearly. So we see age, income, race, education, major headings. And since there's a lot of data, the tool adds the structure to help you start thinking about what's included. We can open the tool together. And as you can see, I entered Fort Lauderdale here. And then I see the age box here. I clicked on Edit Chart. And right away, this allows us as a journalist to dive deeper into the data that's of interest. So here, my data of interest is age, and you can see how now we can really start playing with things. So at the top, you see the location I selected. You could always add another location to do some comparisons or remove and add a whole new place. You can also change the data you're seeing from percentage of people to the numbered count. You can see that's changing everything in terms of my raw data and in the graph. We can also zone in on something more specific in the data set. We can pick a specific age bracket, for example. We also have the ability to change the year very easily, and then also to change the different type of chart. You can see as I click, it's changing over here. And then, of course, in this section, we always see that the raw data source is listed in this corner, more specifically, and here, the wider sources. Now, once you have a chart you're pleased with, you would go and you'd save. And you can see all the options that come up. You can save it to your workspace to be able to access later. And you can download as an image, as a CSV file, maybe to take the data to work in a different tool and make a visualization, or share it in a number of ways. So that's the Common Knowledge Project. The next tool I'd like us to look at together is from the OCCRP, the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. This is a coalition of investigative centers stretched right around the world. And the members follow crime across borders. They follow crime within companies and banks, with individuals. And by publishing these types of stories, they are exposing crime and corruption. Here's the URL for that. So the projects that they do are varied, both in subject and in geography. If you're under the projects tab on the website, you'll see what I mean. And you can see some of the work that's been done. So during COVID alone, different investigations and reporting have ranged from crime during the pandemic from right around the world. So for example, there are stories about individuals or groups that are trying to take advantage of the crisis for their own gain. So whether that be around gang violence in Japan, or substandard protective equipment through Europe, or even drug crime, in this case, cocaine trafficking during worldwide lockdowns. And in addition to reports, they have made various resources available to journalists. So here are two of those resources that you'll easily find by clicking on the Resources tab on their website. The first you see on the left is called Aleph. It's a global archive of research material for investigative reporting. And it includes current and historic databases and documents about different leaks and investigations, and it's all saved in one place. So this could really help a journalist see connections between different global sources. Then the second resource is the OCCRP ID. And this is a service that helps investigative journalists within the OCCRP network. It helps them with their research. So it does make a team of expert researchers and data specialists available to help track down companies and assets. And they provide help with both finding information and then analyzing it. So if you don't have your own team, this is a team that can really help. And they also publish a resource list. And this is comprised of more than 1,000 public data sources that members of the organization have shared as being useful to them as part of their investigative reporting. This is publicly available. You don't have to be a member. And what I did is I went and I limited the search results to Canadian sources just to see what would come up. And as you can see, the results range from Statistics Canada to the Canadian Intellectual Property Office, the Montreal Exchange, different provincial governments. So I was thinking if I was working on investigative work from within Canada, some of these sources may be pretty obvious. But if you were working from Canada on something that touched another country, it could be a really great starting point to check what's included for that region. So both the Common Knowledge Project and the OCCRP tools are developed with journalists in mind. And before we move on to Pinpoint, which was also developed specifically for journalists, there are lots of other tools, so many around online verification in particular, that can be used as part of investigative reporting. So I want to point everyone to this popular resource. If you haven't seen this before, it is the Bellingcat Online Investigation Toolkit. It is worth exploring. I will put the URL in the chat right now. There you go. It can be an overwhelming resource, I will tell you that. There are so many recommendations. And what you're not seeing in the screenshot, but you will see if you bring up the site on your own screen, is that there are different tabs along the bottom of the spreadsheet. So there are different categories for tools for image and video verification, or for social media, for people and phone number searches, for maps and location-based searches. It goes on and on. And what I find useful as well is that beside each tool, it is marked if the tool is free or not, so you know if you can use it right away. Now, there are so many. I'm going to quickly point to two of my personal favorites, which are free to use. If you aren't familiar with Bellingcat, it is a collective of researchers, investigators, citizen journalists from all over the world. And they use open source data and social media, so anything publicly available, to take a closer look and investigate different subjects. And as a result, they've produced investigations about crime, about human rights abuses, conflicts in different countries, and misinformation circulating online is also a popular topic. And they also create different educational resources. So the tools. One of the many tools you'll find a link to here is called SunCalc. And let's say you have a photo or a video and you're trying to verify maybe the time and the place. Well, this allows you to try to use the position of any shadows and the sun to help make an approximation of the time of day. And it can also help you then pinpoint a location. I've actually read that there are some photographers who use this tool to approximate shadows when they're out shooting outdoors. So it's always interesting to see how different people use different tools in very specific contexts. There's also a tool like InVid. It's also free, and it works with Chrome or Firefox as an extension. Now, the developers call it a Swiss Army knife for verification, and if you go and you watch some of the tutorials, you'll see why. It's a very powerful tool. Lots of different options here for helping to analyze different kinds of metadata, for easily doing reverse image searches from videos, or you could even look for digital image tampering using different forensic lenses. So lots to try. As I said, I mentioned checking out the tutorials because they're very short videos, and they show you exactly what each function does. Okay, so on to Pinpoint. Pinpoint is the very first time Google has built a tool specifically for journalists. And while it can have different applications, investigative work was really at the core of its development. As I mentioned earlier, you can find the tool easily through the Journalist Studio. And right now, you do need to access Pinpoint using a Gmail account. This could change in the future, but since the tool is still new, this is one of the limitations right now. Of course, if you don't want to use your personal email, you could consider setting up a new Gmail account, or if you already have a secondary account, you could use that. So Pinpoint came about after identifying some of the pain points in the journalism industry and thinking about how Google would be in a unique position to help. So since time, no surprise to the journalists listening, time, a big challenge, Pinpoint tries to add some support there. And investigative work in particular can involve a lot of documents and interviews you have to go through over and over again to verify. So Pinpoint was developed to help in those cases, to help explore and analyze large collections of documents. Now, if you think of a situation where maybe you've done an access to information request and you end up with volumes of PDFs, or even maybe boxes of photocopies, or maybe you're working on something and there are just so many documents from the archives you want to be able to search through, well, Pinpoint would be a tool to consider. And of course, worth mentioning, it's completely free to use. You have to sign up, identify yourself as a journalist, and someone will grant you access, and you're good to go. So there are different types of files that are compatible when working in Pinpoint. As you can see, pretty standard stuff. Almost everything's covered. PDFs, slideshow files, different kinds of text documents, including email, and even audio and image files. And we're going to look at examples of those as part of the demonstration. In the case of images, the tool uses OCR, that's optical character recognition, and it uses OCR to identify text within photos. Very cool stuff. And for audio files, Pinpoint creates transcripts that are then searchable, and the audio files get embedded within the transcription, which is pretty cool. So I'll also show you an example of that. When you upload a file into Pinpoint, it becomes a PDF, and as a PDF, it becomes fully searchable. And whatever you save in Pinpoint, it doesn't have an impact on your other Google storage limits. I know my email is really teetering at close to the end there. So this is completely independent of that in your Google Drive. And as you can see, the storage limits within Pinpoint are quite generous. And since very few investigations are done by one person alone, the collections of documents you create, they can be easily shared with your team. These are always private by default and only can be seen by you unless you decide to share. And when you do share, you retain ownership. So the contacts you share with, they can see and search the collection, but they can't change it. So you can imagine like the view only feature in a Google Doc. It's exactly similar to that. There isn't currently a way, though, to share your collections publicly. It can only be shared with people you know whose email addresses you enter and share with. So let's open Pinpoint and let's take a look together. So as I mentioned, you can access the tool through the Journalist Studio. Tools for reporting, and then we go down to Pinpoint. If you're logged in like me, it will open the tool automatically. Now we open up to our workspace. At the top, you can see where you can create these collections, so these folders of where your different projects might be stored. And below, you see an Explore section. And these are different collections from different partners. So you can see there's Big Local News, the Washington Post, Document Cloud, the Center for Public Integrity. These are all available collections that you can use in your research if you want. If nothing here is of interest to something you're working on, which is most probably the case because there aren't that many collections as of yet, well, it's still great to play through these and to get a sense for how the tool works. But let's look at a collection that I've been building over the past few months. It's over here. Canada COVID-19 PPE, so PPE for personal protective equipment. If we click on my collection, it opens up and you can see there are 105 files in my collection. And right away along the right side of the screen, the tool has pulled out commonly mentioned organizations, people, locations. It's done this all automatically. So right away, it's harnessing Google's Google search technology directly within Pinpoint. So let's click on a name and see how this whole thing works. If we click on one name, we see that only the documents that contain that name are then in our results. And not only that, the name is highlighted within each document. What we can do is we can add another name, or we can add an organization, or we can add a place to limit our search even more. So we went from 15 to 10 documents there, but we started, as you might remember, with over 100. So right away, we've really been able to narrow our field of relevant documents for our particular search. Let's clear that search, and let's see how we can use the search bar to do a search. So let's search for PPE. And as you can see, Pinpoint has found occurrences of PPE within my collection about PPE, no big surprise there. But what you're also seeing is that it has found related words as well. So it recognizes that we might also be looking for personal protective equipment. But let's say for some reason we were only looking for the acronym PPE. Well, we can limit our search results by using search operators or search modifiers if you prefer. So here are the quotation marks. Now the tool will only find, the same way as in a regular Google search, the tool will only find what appears between the quotation marks. So let's do that again. And as you can see now, the search results are limited only to occurrences of PPE. Of course, personal protective equipment is going to appear in several as well, but maybe not. Other search operators also work in this context. For example, the minus sign. The minus sign excludes a term from your searches. So let's remove the word gloves from our results. So here we have PPE, but we don't want occurrences of gloves for whatever reason. And that would be what is populating now here. Okay, let's look at another feature. Let's look at handwriting. I'm going to look for the word goggles. Scroll down. I'm going to go into this file here. And as you can see, Pinpoint has been able to identify the word goggles that I have very messily written in this note. Not only has it been able to identify it, it's even on an angle. And as I was mentioning before, it even managed to identify eye protection as a synonym, as a related search term. Let's now look at how Pinpoint works with images. So in this case, I'm going to look for the word rescue for this example. I'm going to go down to this file. And as you can see, the tool was able to identify the word rescue on the side of this fire truck. So it's able to identify text within an image. Maybe it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyhow. By doing a search for the word rescue, it's able to find the word rescue, but not, for example, an image of firefighters rescuing someone. It is looking for the text within the image, not the subject of the image itself. Let's go back, and I'd really like to show you the audio function. So let's look for Ryan Reynolds. As you can see, his name is mentioned in a transcript of one of the audio files I added to this collection. So let's open this. And you can see the transcript of a CBC radio that I wanted to keep as part of my collection for reference about PPE. Here's the transcript of the audio file. About 7 minutes. It took about 2 minutes for this transcription to generate when I uploaded it the other day. And as you can see,
Ryan Reynolds is another. Now the initiative is winding down. Suleiman.
The audio file is embedded directly within our transcript for very easy reference, which is really helpful if you're trying to go through a lot of audio files or a long audio file. I will mention, and if you're looking closely at the text, there are certain limitations to the transcription tool. Haley Wickenheiser, not how we spell Haley Wickenheiser's name. The host of this program is not Joel, it's Jill. So this might not be as powerful as some of the transcription tools you use in other cases, but as part of a toolkit of the ensemble of what Pinpoint has to offer, it's certainly extremely powerful. Because I'm someone who has worked between English and French, and I know that there are other journalists who have that same challenge, we can call it, I'd like to show you an example in French as well. So here, if we do symptomatique, that brings up a transcript from a Radio-Canada interview that I added to my collection.
Et des gens qui sont présymptomatiques. Donc, avant de développer les premiers symptômes de fièvre et tout.
So similarly, if you look at this transcription, you're going to notice that it is not exact, but it is a great base and a great reference. What you could do if you were looking to have an exact transcription, you could use this really as the outline for making corrections. And what you could do is download the transcript. And here you can start making any changes as you want. Oh, this happens to be the Ryan Reynolds example. But as you can see, then you can make any changes you'd like. Hello, that kind of thing. You also have the option of always downloading the original audio file from this as well for reference. So there's lots of options to play around with here. It is only recently, and within like the last few weeks actually, that Pinpoint was able to support more languages. If we go, what do I want to do here? If you go back to this little gearbox at the top, you can see that audio transcription is currently available in all of the following. Now, if I wanted to now upload, add a audio file to my collection that was in English, I would want to switch back to English United States in the case of us, because our accents are closer to the United States than the UK or Australia. And I would want to save changes and then add my English file. If I wanted to then go back and add another French transcription file, I would then switch back to French. And similarly, entity display language, that is the entity displays that are showing up on the right-hand side of your screen. So you would be able to change the language there as well. Okay, so that is Pinpoint. Let's go back to the presentation. There we go. Here I am. Hello, everybody. Okay, so Pinpoint is a really good example of using elements of artificial intelligence to support journalism. And according to the Reuters Institute, publishers see AI as the biggest enabler for journalism over the next few years. Now, that's from this report that you're seeing on your screen called the Digital News Project. It was released in January 2021, so fresh stuff, assembled by Nick Newman. And it found that 69% of survey respondents selected AI as the most likely option from the list to be the most important technology for media companies to understand over the next 5 years. Respondents for this study, it's worth mentioning, from 43 countries, from some of the world's leading media companies, both traditional and digital included here. I'll share the report in the chat. Now, it does cite examples of AI in the newsroom within the report I just shared, and including this Canadian example with the Globe and Mail that you're seeing on the top of your screen. So the Globe and Mail has been using AI to make many of the editorial choices on its homepage and also on its landing pages. So they've built an AI-based tool called Sophie, and Sophie helps manage other aspects of their business model as well. Now, that's more on the business side. On the reporting side of things, there are newsrooms around the world that are using AI, like you see in the example on the lower half of your screen. So in this case, a news outlet in Peru called Ojo Público, they used AI to create a tool to spot potential patterns of corruption in government procurement contracts. So their tool is called Funes, and it acts as a repository for more than 245,000. You can see the number climbs at the bottom of the screenshot there. More than 245,000 public contracts, and an algorithm they've built checks documents to calculate the corruption risk as a percentage. So these are just two tools that have been developed by newsrooms, very different goals in mind, but they both do leverage AI. If you are interested in learning more about AI in the newsroom, I really think a great place to start the training lessons on the Training Center. So there are a bunch there, and they walk you through the basics of how journalists can use machine learning to enhance their journalistic work. And then there is a second set of lessons that walk you through how to actually train a machine learning model as part of investigative work. But this really does start from the basics. I don't want to scare anyone off. The basics, like actually explaining the definition of machine learning versus AI. Sometimes they're used interchangeably, but it is good to have a deeper understanding of what's going on and what everyone's talking about. So you can see from this simple image that artificial intelligence is the wider concept of machines being able to do things that usually humans would do. And machine learning, it falls within that. Machine learning uses data to answer questions. So algorithms learn patterns from data, and then they can perform tasks and even improve performance over time. So that element of improving over time, that's the learning in machine learning. And what a lot of us don't realize, or maybe we just don't stop to think about it, is that machine learning and the wider category of AI, well, it's around us every day. We interact with it without even knowing it. So Google Maps, Waze, Google Translate, all the streaming services we're watching while in quarantine, social media, these are all tools that use machine learning. Now, when it comes to journalism, or many sectors really, outside of journalism as well, there is a certain level of fear with a headline like this, understandably. For journalism, it brings up ideas of more lost jobs, of quality being sacrificed for speed of output. And I think what's important to remember is that the idea of AI in journalism isn't to have robots replace journalists, but to look at how newsrooms can harness these tools to do things better. So this may mean using machine learning to find patterns in large data sets, like the example we saw from Peru, or help go through a lot of documents like we saw with Pinpoint. So the goal would be to uncover, break news, do this all faster, and explore data in deeper and new ways that maybe we weren't able to do manually before. And I want to point to the fact that it's not just with text-based files. New technologies also allow us to look through photo imagery faster than ever before, and we certainly have more photo imagery than we've ever had in generations past. And photo imagery is at the heart of an investigative example you're going to find if you go through those training courses at the Training Center website. So the example you'll see there is the one you're seeing now. It's from Texty in the Ukraine. Texty is a data journalism agency that supports projects that involve lots of data, and they try to make it interesting and find ways to make all that data more understandable and accessible. So in 2018, they published this investigation where they used machine learning techniques to detect cases of illegal amber mining across Ukraine. So the model that they built used satellite imagery, and they taught their model to identify images that were and images that weren't locations of illegal amber mining. And working through the example on the training site, you'll learn the fundamentals of building a machine learning model. In this case, as you see on the screen, the Google Cloud Vision API and how to upload tagged imagery to this learning model. And of course, worth highlighting that working with any kind of data set in any circumstance, but also in the circumstance of AI, there are ethical questions to be aware of and to address. And I want to point to this next website for more resources about that. So Journalism AI, this group helped develop the course on the Training Center website. It is a global initiative that's doing research and training on AI in journalism, as their name states. And it's all with the goal to improve the future of journalism with AI. And this could mean for investigative work or for day-to-day operations. And part of this is to foster debate around the ethical, the editorial, the social impact on AI for journalism. And in 2019, they published this report, New Powers, New Responsibilities. The results are based on a survey of 71 news organizations in 32 different countries. And I can direct you specifically to Chapter 3 for more about ethics and reading more about their thoughts and findings about that. And the site is also a great resource for more examples from newsrooms around the world that are using AI in their work. I'm going to drop, right now, I'll drop a link to their landing page in the chat. So this is work that is happening, there you go. It's happening out of the London School of Economics with support from the Google News Initiative. Here's that News Lab Training Center again, where you're going to find that machine learning course and so many others about digital tools that support journalism. So you can explore that at your own pace. And with that, we are at the end of today's session. There are other live sessions coming up. So here again is the website for the Canada Lives, the Canada GNI Lives. That's what the title of the series is. You can register there, and you can also register to watch back to recordings of the past sessions that we've done. So again, please feel free to get in touch with any questions. Here's how to get in touch with myself and other members of my team, whether it be in Canada or the larger News Lab team. It's been a lot of fun presenting to you this afternoon. Again, please feel free to get in touch. I'll put up the slide with my email address again. And I hope to see you next time in 2 weeks' time when we present another GNI Live. Have a great afternoon.